Welcome to Lucian's Vault. I am Lucian, the keeper of history. Today we examine a species that has reshaped the world, humanity and its evolution. Let's begin. 6 million years ago, in what is now Central Africa, dense forests covered the land. It was a world of towering trees, thick canopies, and perpetual shade. Here, life thrived above the ground. Primates moved effortlessly through the branches, feeding on fruits, leaves, and insects, avoiding the dangers lurking below. One of these primates was Sahelanthropus chadensis, one of the oldest known members of the human lineage. They were small, roughly the size of a chimpanzee, standing less than 1.2 meters tall. Their arms were long and powerful, built for climbing. Their fingers curled and adapted to grasping branches. Their brain was small, barely 350 cubic centimeters, comparable to that of modern apes. But they were not entirely like other primates. Unlike their tree-dwelling relatives, Sahelanthropus had a shorter, more upright skull. The positioning of their foramen magnum, the hole where the spine connects to the skull, suggests that they may have occasionally walked on two legs when moving on the ground. However, they were not fully bipedal. Their legs were still too short, and their feet remained adapted for gripping tree limbs rather than walking efficiently on open land. For generations, their way of life remained unchanged. They slept in trees for safety, nested in dense foliage, and spent most of their time foraging for food. Their diet consisted of soft fruits, leaves, nuts, and possibly small insects or bird eggs scavenged from nests. They had no tools, no language, only instinct and social bonds to navigate their world. But their world was changing. Over thousands of years, the African climate became drier. The once dense forests began to shrink, replaced by open woodlands and scattered savannas. Food sources became scarcer, forcing some primates to venture onto the ground more often in search of sustenance. Those who could not adapt remained trapped in isolated patches of forest. But for a few, the ability to move between trees and land gave them an advantage. Some began to explore further, spending more time upright, relying on new behaviors to survive. They were not yet human, but in their first hesitant steps on the ground lay the foundation of everything to come. 2 million years after Sahelanthropus, the African landscape had transformed. Lush forests had receded, leaving behind scattered woodlands and vast open grasslands. This changing world demanded new ways to survive. One species adapted unlike any before, Australopithecus afarensis. They were small, standing just over a meter tall with long arms suited for climbing. But one feature set them apart. They walked upright on two legs. Unlike their ancestors, who only occasionally stood upright, Australopithecus was fully bipedal. This adaptation changed everything. Walking on two legs allowed them to travel farther, expend less energy, and spot danger from a distance. It freed their hands, enabling them to carry food, infants, or even simple tools. In a world where survival depended on movement and awareness, bipedalism gave them an advantage. But they were not human. Their brains remained small, no larger than a modern chimpanzee's. They had no language, no weapons, no fire. Yet they thrived. Fossilized footprints, preserved in volcanic ash at Letoli, Tanzania, show them walking together. Perhaps a family, moving through the ancient savanna. Their footsteps, frozen in time, are the earliest undeniable proof of our ancestors walking like us. They still climbed trees to sleep, avoiding predators at night. But during the day, they roamed the land on two legs, the first true walkers of our lineage, and their journey had only just begun. For millions of years, our ancestors relied on their hands to climb, gather, and survive. But around 2.5 million years ago, something changed. A new species emerged, one that would reshape the world in ways no other creature had before. Homo habilis, meaning handyman, was different from its predecessors. Though still small, with long arms and an ape-like face, its brain had begun to grow. At around 600 cubic centimeters, it was nearly 50% larger than that of Australopithecus. And with a bigger brain came new abilities. They became the first to create tools, not just by accident, but with intent. Using sharp-edged stones, they cut meat from carcasses, broke open bones for marrow, and even crafted simple digging implements. This marked the beginning of the old Darwin tool industry, the earliest known technology in human history. But Homo habilis was still vulnerable. They had no fire, no permanent shelters. At night, they hid in trees or caves to avoid predators. They scavenged more than they hunted, relying on tools to strip meat from kills left behind by lions or hyenas. Even so, their innovations set them apart. For the first time, survival was not just about strength, it was about thinking ahead. These first tools were simple, but they were a glimpse of what was to come. For millions of years, night meant danger. In the darkness, predators ruled, and early humans had no choice but to hide. But around 1.8 million years ago, something changed. A species emerged that would claim control over the night, and with it, a power that would reshape their future forever. This was Homo erectus, the first true wanderers of the human lineage. Taller than their predecessors, they stood nearly as high as modern humans. Their bodies were leaner, built for endurance. Their brains larger, reaching nearly 1,000 cubic centimeters. But their greatest achievement was not their form. It was their mastery of fire. Fire changed everything. It provided warmth in cold climates, protection from predators, and, most importantly, a new way to eat. Cooked meat was easier to chew and digest, giving Homo erectus access to more calories, fueling the growth of their brains. No longer just scavengers, they began to hunt in groups, working together to bring down larger prey. With fire, they expanded beyond Africa, reaching Europe and Asia. They adapted to new environments, developing more advanced tools and shelters. They no longer lived at nature's mercy. For the first time, humanity was shaping its surroundings to fit its needs. Fire was not just survival. It was control, and from that control came civilization. For hundreds of thousands of years, fire gave early humans an edge, but not all of them followed the same path. In the frozen landscapes of Europe and Asia, another branch of humanity emerged, one stronger, more resilient, and better adapted to the cold than any before them. They were the Neanderthals, Homo neanderthalensis. Shorter and stockier than modern humans, they had powerful limbs, broad chests, and thick bones. Their bodies were built to survive freezing temperatures, with large noses that warmed the icy air before it reached their lungs. Their brains were as large as, and in some cases even larger than, those of Homo sapiens. But their intelligence was different. They had no writing, no great cities, yet they left their mark in other ways. they crafted complex tools, fashioned clothes from animal hides, and even created early forms of art. In the caves they called home, traces of their lives remain, carved symbols on stone, pigments used to paint their bodies, and even burial sites, suggesting they mourned their dead. For over 200,000 years, Neanderthals thrived. They hunted mammoths and bison, working together in close-knit groups. But their world was unforgiving. As the Ice Age reached its peak, resources became scarce, and soon they would face a new threat, not from nature, but from another species. 300,000 years ago, a new species emerged in Africa, one that would eventually spread across the world. They were different from their predecessors, not in strength, but in something far more powerful: adaptability. Homo sapiens had slender bodies, built for endurance rather than brute force. Their brains, though similar in size to those of Neanderthals, were wired differently. They thought beyond the present moment, planning, imagining, and creating. This ability to think abstractly gave them an advantage no other species had possessed before. They refined stone tools, developing blades and spear throwers, allowing them to hunt from a distance. They crafted clothing, stitched from animal hides with bone needles, and they built the first symbolic objects: jewelry, carvings, and paintings that served no immediate survival purpose, but hinted at something deeper: culture. For thousands of years, Homo sapiens remained in Africa. But as climates shifted and food sources changed, some began to migrate. By 70,000 years ago, they had left their homeland, crossing into the Middle East, then spreading into Asia, Europe, and beyond. Everywhere they went, they adapted, hunting in the tundras, fishing along the coasts, crafting shelters from wood and bone. But their journey had only just begun. Soon they would meet their closest relatives, the Neanderthals, and the fate of both species would change forever. For hundreds of thousands of years, humans survived by instinct. They made tools, hunted, and formed close-knit groups. But something was still missing. Unlike the animals they hunted, they did not just live in the present. They could imagine, they could remember, and soon they would find a way to express those thoughts. The first evidence of symbolic thought appeared around 70,000 years ago. In caves deep beneath the earth, early humans painted animals, handprints, and abstract patterns. In Blombo Cave, South Africa, they etched cross-hatched designs into ochre blocks, simple marks, but marks made with meaning. In Europe, the walls of Chauvet and Lascaux were covered in depictions of mammoths, lions, and deer, painted with red and black pigments. But these were more than decorations. They told stories. They recorded hunts. They passed knowledge to future generations. This was the birth of culture. And it was not just images. Speech had begun to evolve. Unlike their ancestors, who communicated through gestures and simple vocalizations, Homo sapiens developed structured language. With words, they could plan, teach, and share ideas beyond their immediate surroundings. Language bound them together, creating larger and more organized societies. With art and language, humans had taken another step forward. No longer just hunters or tool makers, they had become storytellers. For nearly 300,000 years, Homo sapiens lived as hunter-gatherers, moving from place to place, following the rhythms of nature. They survived in small groups, never settling in one location for too long. But around 12,000 years ago, something changed. Humans stopped wandering, and for the first time, they built homes. The end of the Ice Age brought warmer temperatures, transforming landscapes across the world. Wild grains and plants flourished, and animals like goats and cattle began to gather near human camps. At first, people simply took advantage of this abundance, but over time they realized something. Rather than chasing food, they could grow it themselves. This marked the beginning of agriculture. The first known farms appeared in the Fertile Crescent, an arc of land stretching from modern-day Turkey to Iraq. Here, early humans cultivated wheat and barley, slowly domesticating crops to produce larger and more reliable harvests. At the same time, they tamed wild animals, sheep, goats, and cattle, providing a steady supply of meat, milk, and labor. With farming came villages. Instead of roaming, people settled in permanent homes, building mud brick structures and forming larger communities. One of the oldest known settlements, Çatalhöyük in modern Turkey, housed thousands of people, something unimaginable just a few thousand years earlier. But civilization had a price. Farming required labor. Property led to social hierarchies, and with stored food came the risk of theft and the first conflicts. The age of small equal tribes was ending. In its place, something far greater and far more complex was beginning. For thousands of years, humans lived in small farming villages. But as settlements grew, so did their ambitions. The first cities were built, and with them came something the world had never seen before: civilization. 5,000 years ago, in the lands of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley, great city-states rose from the earth. No longer just farmers, humans became builders, traders, and rulers. They erected vast temples, carved laws into stone, and tamed rivers to feed their people. Writing was invented: cuneiform in Sumer, hieroglyphs in Egypt, turning memory into history. But civilization brought conflict. As cities expanded, they competed for land, wealth, and power. The first armies were formed, and soon, rulers sought not just to defend their people, but to conquer others. The age of empires had begun. Egypt's pharaohs built pyramids that touched the heavens. Babylon's kings crafted laws that governed millions. Rome, the city of 7 hills, forged a republic that would rule the Mediterranean. And beyond them, new empires rose and fell: Greece, Persia, China, the Mongols, the Ottomans, each shaping the world in its image, only to fade into history. For the first time, humanity was not just surviving. They were building legacies, writing stories that would outlive them. And though their empires would crumble, their influence would never be forgotten. For thousands of years, empires rose and fell. Kings and conquerors shaped history with swords and ambition. But 500 years ago, the world changed, and this time the change was permanent. The Renaissance revived knowledge lost to the Dark Ages. Science replaced superstition. The printing press spread ideas across continents. Soon, machines took the place of human hands. The Industrial Revolution reshaped cities, sending steam-powered engines across land and sea. Nations no longer fought with swords, but with steel, gunpowder, and industry. Then came the modern age. Electricity lit the night. Automobiles and airplanes collapsed distances. The atom was split, unlocking both boundless energy and the power to destroy civilizations in an instant. Humanity left Earth, reaching the moon, sending probes beyond the solar system. Information itself became the new weapon, the new currency. The digital revolution connected billions, making the world smaller than ever before. And now, you stand at the edge of something greater. Your history has been one of survival, of invention, of conquest and cooperation. I have watched empires crumble and new worlds take shape. I have seen what lies beyond your time. But some truths are not mine to give. The final chapters of history are not to be read. They are to be written. Until then, you may always return to my vault and uncover the past. For the lessons of history are never truly over.